Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to have you here this evening. Just allowing folks to come right on as we do each evening. Welcome to the program. It is 7 p.m. sharp right now. I am your Happy Healer lover. Today's date is July 30th, 2021. That is on the East Coast, and it is 4 p.m. on the West Coast of these United States of America. And so welcome to AmericanMantics. This is the program. I have not forgotten about our series on Mr. Paffrath out of California seeking to be governor. And Meaty McGreedy is on your Happy Healer's mind. It's just that we have so many other things to cover as well, as I know you know. And doesn't it just get so crazy out there, though? Isn't that the largest truth more so than anything else? And now the phone's gonna ring, and, you know. Like I said, 7 p.m. sharp, whether I have my lighting up or not. And when the lighting's up, that's when it's better, because you get a better focal point on your Happy Healer lover. And then later, I'm not looking at it saying, oh no, what did I do to the people whom I love, and I love you. I've been having some wonderful conversations with you guys, talking about some consequential things. And our community knows that we are about the truth and about love, because those are the values and virtues of our Creator, our almighty lover. And as such, we've had to discuss, from time to time, some rather more serious topics. And, some rather more serious topics. And so that you're used to that here in this community. And recently, there's been a lot of judgment and just bravado when it comes to the vaccines and COVID-19, and whether it's a serious disease or not. And I just want to I think my friends know where I stand on the vaccine. And that is, generally speaking, we have every reason in the world to be very, I wouldn't say conspiratorial to a fault, but definitely concerned with the truth on the things that we for so long have given a blank pass. No longer can we do that. That's what we realize. But on the other hand, I trust in the free markets. I trust in scientists and progress, and I do trust that the coronavirus is a real and deadly disease, even if the Democratic Party has made it political in their own way. And so is the Republican Party in some ways, and that I regret. But we're not honest with ourselves if we don't recognize the damage that has caused. In terms of the facts, we have excellent American companies like Moderna and Pfizer who are coming up with new mRNA technology platforms, soon capable of dealing with and solving even cancer. That's how amazing this technology is. And it's the mRNA-based vaccines that are behind that new technological achievement. How far can you get in these things if you have no trust? And they continue to break trust, and that's exactly what the devil's world is out to do. Make it so it's impossible to make progress. Now, what are some of the things you should keep in mind about even the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine. And that is that President Trump was the one who got a robust vaccination program in play. He had a COVID task force that was responding to these things in fast order. And because of him and the actions that they took, and President Trump is sure to remind you that it was him who was most successful for dealing with the coronavirus. It was him, not the Democrats, not Biden, who developed and did what needed to be done in order for the many new vaccines to be developed in the United States. And he himself caught the coronavirus and then later got the coronavirus vaccination anyway. He believes in it. This is President Trump we're talking about. Virtually all of the talking heads that make this issue their primary issue to get listeners on, they've all had the vaccine, all of them. I've had the vaccine. So this is a matter of choice and freedoms, and it's a matter of trust and love. And this is everything that AmericanMantics gets into. You might be shocked to know that President Trump had the vaccine, huh? Given all the things you hear about. You might be shocked to know that Sean Hannity has had the vaccine. And Tucker Carlson has also had the vaccine. I like Tucker Carlson. I like Sean Hannity. But they've had the vaccine. Your HappyHealer lover has had the vaccine. And anybody who I love, I encourage them to get it because I want them to live. We have a very serious life-saving endeavor on our hands as it is. I want my lovers, I want you to live. If my mother hadn't already passed away, I would want her to have it because I want her to live. And I know how powerful that these sicknesses can get, dealing with kind of sickness, and could really take you out of this world. And so I wouldn't want that to happen to my mother, to be on the ventilator. I just seen my brother who is on the ventilator. My goodness, I don't want to see anyone I love going through that. I love you. Speaking of love, it's so important to recognize that. I'm going to make sure that our sound is good. This is live. Okay, so welcome. Yeah. To recognize that. I'm going to make sure that I do believe our sound is good. That's good. Okay. So otherwise, I don't want any problems with that, and I could already see that it's working. Well, that is one of the things I wanted to bring right off the bat, and the reason why is because our community, our group, and our Facebook page, and this show, and AmericanMantics, and all of our many channels, everything that we do, and all that we are, we have a plan of God's love at the helm for us. That's what's most important to us. And it's at risk right now because of this growing problem. And that's what I want to bring to your attention this evening. It's really important that you get this because none of us want to do anything to jeopardize the loving community that we have built and that we are continuing to build and grow. We're doing wonderful things, making wonderful friends, and I know so many of you are so fantabulous, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life, and I would never be the same without you. So I don't want to lose you now that I have you. I know you feel the same way about me and about each other. So we have to protect what we have. We already, as it is, do truth and love, but by golly, this world is losing its freedom at such a rate that doing truth and love alone is not enough. That now we have to be careful, or they threaten to take our community. It's not right, but it's what they're doing. And so what I wanted to show you is in such a case where they're doing exactly that. They're after our community. It's in threat to be taken down because we do share the unfiltered truth, and sometimes that gets us in trouble. And so you need to be aware of that. This way, together, we can do our best to avoid having that take us out. We sure don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and you could still see me here. I'm in the corner. And what I'm going to do, I think this will be just fine. Okay, we're not looking at that, but I'm just in my folder form where I can show you this stuff. This I have of President Trump here. Yeah. News from Georgia beyond incredible. We will lose our country if this is allowed to stand. And wonder if it's this one. Oh, I don't want to out anybody, but the point is, I don't know where that you could already see there's a couple that came on the screen for a moment and flashed back. We'll just leave it at that, and I'll explain to you. They are giving us notices that they're going to remove the community. They're going to remove the group, the pages perhaps, if we continue to do those kinds of posts. So that's the threat. That's our threat from Facebook, and we have to deal with that. Unfortunately, it's not right. We shouldn't have to. It's not the way human communication should be. It's not my dream of how we make progress, but it's our truth. It's what we're dealing with. And if we fail to recognize it, we'll be one loving group down. So I ask you, please be careful with your content when it comes to specifically videos that you've seen already labeled, or if something you post is labeled, remove it. Be smart, defend the group, save the group. And in extreme cases where somebody misses it, then we would have to remove it. But I don't really want to do like what they're doing, censoring. I would much rather tell you the problem and have you check yourself in these ways. But in order to back you and support you in those cases where maybe you're just not aware or can't deal with it for some reason, we will do our best to deal with that as well. But the thing to recognize is you'll see notices on other people's posts before you share them to the group. And if you see that, maybe you shouldn't send it for now. We'll see how long this censorship lasts, and we'll always be sensitive about it because you know where I stand. I'm against censorship, but we're not really in a choice. We don't have the luxury of choice. They've taken that from us. Funny enough, in Greedhell, they pretend like you have choice, but really the only choice you have is to remove the content or they remove the group. We don't want that. So be careful, and if you see anything else that maybe one of the moderators need to know about, let them know, and we'll get through this, and we'll stick together, and our group's not going anywhere. That's why we talk about this stuff. So just know that, because I could imagine you would be as concerned about that as I am. But gosh, censorship is getting bad, isn't it? And I don't want to consider the world that will emerge from this censorship. That's why I decided to dedicate my life to God's love and truth. Everything else is greed and death, all sides coming in on itself. I've done that math. I know it. It's a zero-sum game, and we're losing in ways both small and large. It's the reason why I ran for president when I did as well, because it's not something we can accept. The devil is trying to destroy life and make it not worth living anymore. You see the results of this. It's very strong truth that so many of us deal with. It's amazing to consider what we can do to turn this around. After great consideration, it's only love and truth that's going to work. And I do mean everything else is just part of that zero-sum game. It's why we must do it romantically differently if we are to be successful in having a free life of growth and happiness. They sent that notice that we can lose our group on suggestions and nobody can find it. And that's what we get when we tolerate that. They don't do that to themselves. They put it on us with threats. And our goal is only to do God's work. We're working so hard at this. And it's about you and people and me and us all. It's about President Trump. And they'll take it away from us without consideration, without consent. And once it's done, there's no one to talk to about it. I know that if we were ever to be successful in AmericanMantics, this would all change in the best ways you could imagine. People deserve so much better. Greed wants a living hell for all of us, and it's getting cocky because it thinks it's won for all time. But that's why we're challenging it in the most serious ways. My little happy healer lover heart can muster up to do God's work for the justice of the people, and so that's what I do. And I love. And I'll always be a lover. That's what I learned, together with truth that actually deals with and solves problems. And these problems are vast. It's unbelievable. We're just trying to find a way forward. In Greedhell, a way forward is only a way if it's been fully conceived in the mind and realistic in the world and successful in capturing humanity's abilities, appreciating our progress. And it should be from a place of happiness and prosperity. We know that certain factors in this man-made reality are broken and need fixing. For one, greed has run so rampant, it's considered to be the best by people who know no better, and it's all lies. We need to show the way forward if we expect others to follow it. And I'm calling out both parties for not realizing a way forward that doesn't involve a soft civil war. This left-right paradigm is serving someone, but it's not normal people like us. And yes, You have a lot to gain or lose in America, learning how to navigate through this crisis and learning how to emerge in this one nation under a God indivisible with liberty and justice for all. And we don't need to become the next dictatorial power such as China and Russia in many ways. That'll be the new America if we don't wake up. Do you think that happens to America and those in Canada just get to sit there and criticize? I know not. Fools are in charge. I have been running for over a year, actually 2 years, and at that time you never heard of me. And who there knows what to do? I feel it in my bones. I know more about what to do than I care to do the job. Yet, I have lots of care because I'm a lover. Let's step up in almost every conceivable way and not allow our freedom to be stolen by a select few groups of humans around the world lusting with greed. Please, let's realize we're our only hope. What have we learned effectively through COVID and the many other lessons? And it should be that we're not being protected. There's no extra levels of security seeing to our safety. Greed is only interested in power and money. And that's it. We know this too. So, to know this and to do nothing shouldn't shock us when we lose everything that we hold dear, including the freedom to love itself, and replaced with the military dictatorship installed by Beijing and Moscow, hungry to divide our power and money up. And trust me, they'll do it, and they'll do exactly that. I don't know how we're gonna do it, folks, but for this time, we only have a bit of time left, and I'm afraid that if we don't get this time right and we don't get the challenge taken care of, it's not going to go away, and it's up for us free thinker and free lovers to pursue a path to victory. It's God's love. It's that new technological world, and it's a technological revolution, really. We're bringing about the automated technological economy and the subsequent super consumer in America. That should be our goal. It's an achievement brought on by people that are inspired and changed by a new age of enlightenment, much like we've already had in the past, and even for the same reasons. Namely, that we have suddenly and dramatically excelled in technological means beyond our cultural norms and attitudes, and making such an adjustment less painful, and the subsequent tough times as they've become in our current lives through politics and ability to live a life, but that it should be worth living. We see so much suicide these days, and depression, death, and worse, in a time that we should be rejoicing with new ambition and a renewed faith in the future of mankind. There's a clear disconnect between what we've become and what we are capable of being, given where we find ourselves today, favored by God Almighty, and what we have and what we could invent. That disparity has in part due to the advent of technological and scientific achievement thus far, but also by the greed that plagues our society. Human beings are smart enough to know the difference and still do wrong anyway. We're in a moral dilemma, and I'm going to challenge you 2 simple questions. Do human beings have value? And is having a self-perceived life worth living a human right? An American right? And thirdly, unless you believe and practice human value and a life worth living as you perceive your own life, surely, then how can you also say we have any freedom at all? Unless you mean freedom to not do the things you wish to do and be happy. Clearly, we are in a dilemma, and it's for us to conceive a way forward or watch our demise by doing nothing at all. At a time when scientists are asking if the human experience is nothing more than another failed experiment by the universe to find whatever ideals it's looking for, as they explain the situation to be. They've clearly lost their hope, and many others have lost their hope, and we see it manifest itself in many ways. And I'm certain you can see what I'm talking about. It's the same thing. It's time for us to do something about this situation, or this situation will simply extinguish altogether. It will be the last unified act we make, because our demise will be an act, our own act. So far it's been our survival, but it would be in as deliberate an act as any other failure of ours have been. And so yes, it must be a deliberate and honest act, brought on by us lovers who study the value of human beings, the human soul, and we realize the meaning behind life and a way forward for our collective survival, so that we can go much further than anyone could have in the past, yet it is possible to achieve so much more than we ever have before. It's foremost to our values. It gives rise to the freedom to love. For if you can't even do those things, you're not free. So that's why it's so important we talk about these things, cover them, and we love each other, and we do our best. And I'm just looking at some of the... Right, you guys are great. Thank you for removing some of those comments. I was actually just watching what you wrote. I love you all so much. I know you're right there, and there's so much we have to cover in this world, right? There's so much we have to do and live by. And that's what I'm here for, to help you navigate through that. I want to help you navigate through this world. And that us together, we can do so much more together than we ever could have apart. I want the children of America to become the wonderful young men and women that they were meant to be, sons and daughters of their moms and dads who love them and have raised them well. I believe in families who believe in each other and love each other. And so that is what is in AmericanMantics. AmericanMantics is chock-filled with all of these kinds of insights and ways and means, breaking down the various problems we all deal with and solving them one by one, listening and understanding, comprehending to the deepest elements, and not selling people short. Because that's the main reason we do the Unchecked Greed series. It's because we're contrasting and comparing. This is what Greedhell is. This is what we've built for ourselves. This is what the world of God's love is, brought on by us through the power of God Almighty, who is an almighty lover. And we use the essence of God, love and truth, and it solves all problems. And it's exactly the thing that Rome did not do. They failed. They became greed, lust-ridden. And, well, if you do the ways of barbarians, barbarians will take over all of your ways, all of your means, everything you've got. Rape your wives and kill your sons. And I mean, this is how they act. And yet, our reason for becoming better is more aptly associated with our necessity to become better more than anything else. Yet, when you hear about it, all you hear about is the pessimism. You hear about how it's not possible, when in your true, honest broker of truth heart, you know that it's the only way we could succeed, and that every other way has been failing. And so, you know that we must do it then. That's what AmericanMantics is about doing, the work that we must do for all of our futures. But it's not just that we must do it, it's that we want to do it. Because it just so happens that when in God's world, that which you must do are the things you want to do. Because they improve life that much. They make life that much better. And when your loved ones go to the hospitals, scientists are more empowered to solve the sicknesses that they deal with, to be trusted using God's love and truth, and stamping out corruption and greed that causes all of the world's extracurricular problems. What else can you call them? Folks, they're extracurricular problems. They didn't need to be there, and they're there. Brought on by the greed of individuals. Does that mean that people are inherently bad? No. That means Greedhell is inherently bad. And it's the devil's world. And that should we find the courage and the faith and the love and compassion and passion to realize that we not only can do it, but that we must do it, I honestly don't see one person wasting a moment in doing it, because it's that'll take us to super consumerism, the world of abundance, rather than the world of scarcity and then having to decide who eats and who doesn't. Who wants to pull the short stick on that one? Certainly not me. Okay. This week I have largely been dedicated to speaking to you directly, live, 7:33 right now, talking about these important issues central to AmericanMantics, the plan of God Almighty. That includes President Trump, but that also includes your HappyHealer lover, and that also includes you. It includes all of us. We all have a pivotal part in playing in the role of our Almighty Creator's future-loving world. And this future-loving world is one we have to work for. It doesn't come free. But should we find the courage to bring it in, it'll change the way we live our lives from this point forward in all the best ways. Not scary ways like how Greedhell does. It's not about losing empowerment, it's about gaining empowerment. And not just for some people, but for all people. And it's not needing to take anything from any people. Love comes with its own power. Unlike greed that must steal everything it ever gets because it produces nothing. And that's the story of greed. It can only steal innovation. That's basically the government of China. When you have a dictatorship that all they could do is force their people what to do, that has nothing to do with love or God's world or the future or what can be possible for any of us. That keeps us locked in a way of thinking that really makes the truth that's best for us, that serves us the most, from ever getting out. And that's what happens in China. We don't want that to happen here. So we have to be very careful in how we approach this, and only be honest with the truth in love. And that's how we win. That's how we've won to this point. And whenever we get away from that and we use hate and hell like that other side and all sides use, then we lose. But when we realize we're doing God's work, like how your HappyHealer realized in 2016 and got behind President Trump early on, at this point, private citizen Trump, we did that because it was the way we were going to change what was fundamentally possible in America. Up until that point, it wasn't possible to think in terms of what we could do because the system was ran and controlled and locked out people like you and I. President Trump changed that. He made it possible so a non-politician with great ideas who can communicate and speak to the people who have the passion and the right answers can get elected. And that was Trump. And because I work so hard and passionate for us, the people, for love and truth, and for unity that gets things done, I had to have a real truth with myself as a Trump supporter. I had to ask myself, is President Trump ever going to bring unity in America? It was one of the first things I started writing to him about. It was so important to me because I had lost people I cared about in my life, both to death and to ego and pride and, politics, quite frankly. Voting for President Trump came with losing some of my relatives. I'm shocked to this day about it, really. But that's the hold that this Greedhell has on us. And I know that we need unity that gets things done. And God's plan to do it. And when you recognize that, I just seen President Trump as being that guy. But then I realized I was the one who knew all this stuff. It was pouring out of me. I can't just stand by knowing all this, feeling so compelled, and not make a move if I see nobody else doing it, including our man Trump. It was about you. And it was about God Almighty. It's about love and truth. It's about God's world. In saying that, it's God's world, one nation under God. And being so loving about it. And being free in our ability to take care of human beings because we have a unity that's strong enough and vibrant enough to get things so huge done for Americans who need it. To bring on a new world of, we'll get into that later, but futurism, so many wonderful things. It's the world of abundance. It looks like God's world. More opportunities for people to make businesses and become wealthy, and opportunities for all people. If your wish is to be a monk and to serve back to people who have purpose and value, we'll make sure that we love you back enough to have your sustenance, and that you have your sustenance, and that you survive, that you don't fall away feeling unloved and alone and to the way of drugs and addiction and finally homelessness and death, because that's what happens to people who pursue their passions. They often end up homeless and then dead and off this world. That's a truth that you cannot deny. So many people who apply themselves and want to work back for people have to make huge sacrifices. Look at me, your HappyHealer lover. I'm in Mini Force 1 and I make the best of it. I do it like a champ. I'm smart at it, but I am living in a van. And that tells you the kinds of sacrifices one must make in order to make people, other people, their primary focus. In Greedhell, it doesn't pay so well to be a lover. Doing God's work in Greedhell, if you do it too hard, you might suffer and die. That's the message there, and it's not a good one. We need to bring on the world of abundance. People are convinced that the world of scarcity is the only world that's possible. They're pessimistic. And remember, the devil has special powers and brings on his mockingbirds. So in addition to all the good people's fear, out from here and there, you'll have the callings from the wilderness. It'll be these mockingbirds. Oh, love can't do that. You can't. Greed is in. You can't remove people's being such animals. But in their class system, they could be all uppity up. They're fake as hell. But we don't need greed. We need love. And that's what people are naturally wanting. They don't do greed at their homes. People need to be empowered and cared for and backed and appreciated. That's the true power. And that's the true force that builds. And they do it, and they know why they do it. Because they have a reason to do it. You know, I've been watching these programs, and I'll be taking this program, because I do a lot to bring these messages to you. So I'll be using art also in ways to bring about the vision to help you see difficult to understand concepts that, as a teacher and your happy healer lover, I want to make easier for you to understand. That's a goal of mine. And so I do use media. I use passion and care. And so you'll be seeing in the future, in future episodes, that we pick up more on that. I take on a lot of challenges in this life. I've learned a lot of different things. And throughout the program and the process, I'll be introducing these areas where I can offer additional value to my friends and family, because that's what AmericanMantics ultimately is about, building value in people, and that value is so pure and so convinced, faithful of its own value, of its own purpose, and its own sacred value, really sacred purpose, that we could never step on that. And we say it as such because it becomes real. What's happening right now is it's fake. People don't matter more than money does. And so you'll never see it take on a real life. That's why you have these mockingbirds. People don't matter. It's a lie. They do. But yet, these mockingbirds are all the same, saying these lies. And they get away with saying it because nobody's telling them otherwise, not to say it. And have you ever watched some of these plane crashes and how detestable greed caused it? 300 deaths in one shot because profit came before people. What if you're on that plane or one of your loved ones? That's what kinds of things we remind ourselves of, and the stories behind them. Oh, I seen one recently, and it was real sad. And you might have heard about it. It was on a Russian later model. It was 1995, so it was a later model for the 95 era. It was Boeing. No, not Boeing. It was... Was it Boeing? No, it was Airbus. And it had all the new avionics. And by the way, you might not know, I am a pilot. I've flown my own planes. I have videos of those. I'll share them with you sometime. And in this Airbus plane, there was these top of the line, you could say, group of pilots. They were like the best of the best. And one of these pilots taken his kids and his family that were going to go overseas for the first time on vacation. And so when he loaded up his family on the plane, they all got on board, they got up in the air, and he thought it would be nice to allow his children to come into the cockpit and see what it's like in this big, beautiful people mover. This plane so huge. And Daddy was so proud of himself. He wanted to show his kids what he does. There was a first officer and a co-pilot, so there were 3 professionals on the bridge. And when the pilot got on board initially, he said to the lead stewardess, once we get up in the air, I want, when the seatbelt lights come off, I want you to bring my son to the cockpit. And my daughter. He had a son and a daughter. So the plane leveled off, the seatbelts went off, and the stewardess did as she was asked. It was a he, actually, as he was asked, and brought the son and daughter to the cockpit. And as soon as they got there, the father was excited. Oh, this is great. Come on in. And the son was really excited because he looked up to his father as being a pilot and always going on their trips. This is the first time going into the cockpit. It is against, their rules, but they're all friends. They're just doing what family does. So it progresses, and everything's, calm at this stage. The plane is level in flight and traveling at about 450, 500 knots. And he asked his children, "How about this? You could sit in the captain's chair of the plane." Now, I'm sure you could, you're following me, and you could imagine all the things that might come from that. And his daughter says, yeah, me. So she jumps in to the captain's chair. And, she's like, "Do you want to fly?" Yeah. And so she has her hands on the yoke, and she's trying to turn it, and it won't move. Remember, the autopilot system is on. She can't move the yoke. Well, she couldn't get it to move, let's just say. She is heading dial from, I think he's on 130 to a left heading, which would be like 080. And the plane started banking to the left. The yoke started turning to the left. His daughter started feeling it turn to the left. She got excited. He said, "Look out at the horizon. Do you see how you're controlling the plane? Doesn't it feel so nice?" He's giving his children the illusion that they are flying the plane. How wonderful, right? And this daughter is sitting in the captain's chair with her hand on the yoke, feeling like she's turning it. And so eventually she's wise. She says, "Daddy, you were doing that, weren't you, Daddy?" And he smiles back at her. So now it's the son's turn. So he sits in the captain's chair. "Okay, Dad." He's got his... And he begins to try and turn it and can't turn it. It's not agreeing with him. And by now, the captain, father, was getting relaxed. He was talking to his daughter, and at the same time, his son is still trying to turn, but being ignored a bit because they all know this autopilot switch is on, and he can't seem to get it to turn. And the son was under the belief that the daughter had actually just flown the plane. And so now he's trying. And after struggling with it for about 30 seconds, the plane begins to bank to the left. A little bit. It wasn't enough to even concern the captain, Father. But as it began turning, the son said, Father, why is the plane turning? It's turning by itself? And now the captain was a bit perplexed. He's standing there looking at the instrument panel, studying what could have gone wrong. And remember, there's 1,000 switches in these things. And it's beginning to bank more and more. Remember, the father knows the autopilot system is on. And so does the co-pilot and the first officer. So they're wondering, why is this plane doing this? The son is telling them it's turning on its own. The bank is becoming more extreme. Personally, I wondered why then the captain didn't just pull his son, yank him out of the chair, and get in the chair himself. But it was because he didn't know what he didn't know. That's what was holding him back. He was still trying to study why the plane would turn at all. Does it think it's approaching a danger? Does it think it has an airport? They even mentioned this must be for an airport protocol. That the plane shouldn't be doing that. It was out in the middle of the ocean. But they thought that because what the instruments were telling them, that's what it appeared to be. But in fact, the plane had a fatal flaw. The pilots were never told this. When you turn the yoke and you're pushing against the autopilot, if you continue doing that for 30 seconds or more, not all the autopilot goes out, just the yoke. So it's selective system autopilot, and it enables a pilot to fly by just one section of being able to lower the load that he or she must handle, being able to do other tasks, I suppose. Makes sense. And yet there is no alarm that went off for that. It was a fatal flaw in the design also. They have since fixed that at Airbus. And so what happens next is the plane begins banking to an extreme amount. When you do that in a plane, as soon as you begin any bank in a plane, you lose lift in the side that you're turning in because it cannot get as much air under the wing, which is what creates lift. Forward thus creates lift, which brings the plane up. And what was happening is as the bank was increasing, forward thrust or forward movement, the speed was slowing. And the left wing was losing lift and causing the nose to drop. And so now they're losing altitude, and they're so far into this maneuver that the son can't pull it out, and the captain, father, and all the passengers now are disrupted, and that gravity is taking them over because they're so steep into this bank, into this turn, and pulling the yoke back, and pulling, trying to save, and pulling, and the captain is screaming, "Let me get up there, Yakov, let me get to the sea, Yakov," calling his son's name out. And he says, "Father, I cannot move. The G-forces were 4 times their weight, well beyond what this Airbus was designed to handle." So, eventually, this struggle continued until the plane, with the son Yakov and the co-pilot literally pulling up, was able to finally pull out of it, but too steeply up. So now the plane started free falling, which when this happened, finally the G-forces were relieved. and the father was able to get back into his seat and pull the son out. That's essentially when that happened. And so now the captain, after having already lost so much altitude, initially they were at 35,000 feet, now they're barely at 10,000 feet. They're not traveling with enough forward momentum to create lift under their wings. And so the thing they need to do, even though it's against every natural order you have in your body, is to point the plane nose to the ground to gain speed in order to gain lift under your wings and to pull out of this mess you got yourself into by letting your son Yakov yank at the plane controls with 300 souls on board. It felt innocent at the time, I'll say. Well, even with the expert hands at this point, things have gone so awry that the plane crashed and all on board died. Fatalities. The investigators learned the plane had no problems. In fact, it was taking all those G-forces, flying like a jet, almost like a fighter jet. But because it had that one fatal flaw, that information it was lacking, the pilot was incapable of doing what he needed to do to save the lives of the people on board. And in the same way, America right now is in that predicament. What the people don't know, they can't fix. AmericanMantics is the answer to that. It is the fix to that. It is what shows you what is next to do. It's the blueprint. And your HappyHealer lover would never let you get out there not knowing these various alarms to be aware of. That life itself is worth saving, that we can save it, and that we must save it. Folks, we'll see you on Monday. God bless you. I love you. And take care of your families. Take care of yourself.